Hello everybody, my name is Rainday and welcome back to another episode of How to Play. Last week we took a look at Androxus the Godslayer, but in honor of the TF2 skin, this week we're going to take a look at Barik the Ruins Raider. One of Barik's main strengths, and what makes him unique from other champions and Paladins, is that he has turrets. And that means he has consistent and guaranteed damage whenever they're up. Turrets don't miss, like players, so Barik has a very reliable form of DPS, when enemies don't destroy them, that is. Secondly, he's great when he's bunkered in. A Barik near his two secure turrets is not an easy thing to kill, especially if he throws up his shield. It can be a nightmare trying to deal with him as well as other champions, especially if you're part of the damage flank class, which means you'll usually have a very low health pool. Lastly, Barik is kind of a dwarf of all trades. He has a dash, his gun does damage, and potentially a lot of it. He isn't easy to kill, he has an ultimate that can clear an objective, 2 shields, and of course, 2 auto-damaging turrets. Though he doesn't damage, flank, hold objectives, or heal better than anyone else, he can do a bit of everything, and that makes him a deadly threat in the realm. Moving into the skills. Barik's left mouse button is called Blunderbuss. It's essentially a close-range spread weapon that works wonders from up close and is pretty dismal from afar. The damage fall-off on this bad boy is intense, and that's why Barik is so much better at fighting on objectives and close to his enemies rather than facing off against targets at range. By itself, the damage isn't remarkable, but when Barik's turrets mark an enemy by shooting them, his Blunderbuss consumes that mark, adding additional damage onto his weapon. This can stack up to 2 times, creating a seriously hard-hitting shot. Combine this with the fact that consuming 2 marks means that your enemy has already taken 2 shots from your turret, then things are looking good for that dwarf. Barik's right mouse button is called Barricade, and it's really just that. It's a barrier that blocks damage and lasts for a short duration of time. The shield gets placed in the ground, and like all shields in this game, ally shots can pass through it while enemy shots are blocked until the shield's duration stops or enough damage is dealt to break the shield. This is Barik's primary method of point sustain and support for his team, so using the shield at the right time is crucial to achieving success. Barik's F skill is called Rocket Boots. Rocket Boots is Barik's movement skill. He essentially turns on the heat and zooms across the battlefield, quickly separating himself from the action of a fight, or chasing down an enemy who has escaped his dwarven rage. Either way, Rocket Boots is a very solid movement skill and does a great job at taking Barik where he needs to go. Moving on to Barik's Q skill, his turrets. If Barik was a baby daddy, his babies would be his turrets. He could pop out 2 of these suckers at a time, though there is a delay between when he actually uses the ability and when the turret deploys. There is also a cooldown between deploying 1 turret and being able to deploy a second, just to be clear. His turrets do a small but very consistent and relevant amount of damage to targets who walk in their line of sight and range. His turrets can shoot through walls, but they can shoot targets in the air to a degree as well, so even Drogos or dragons aren't safe from this dwarf. As mentioned earlier, each shot from a turret that an enemy takes marks them, and only 1 individual mark can be applied per turret, totaling up to 2 marks on a potential enemy if they were to be hit by both of them. Lastly, Barik's ultimate is called Dome Shield. Barik deploys a huge shield that blocks an insanely large amount of damage, creating a bubble of safety for his teammates to fight inside. Not only that, a flamethrower turret spawns in the middle, dealing about the same amount of damage per second as Fernando would if he were simply standing inside Barik's shield and using his flame lance on a target. This ultimate does not do an incredible amount of damage, but it has some of the best objective clearing potential in the game. Enemy players scramble at the sound of this ult, and considering that Barik can also deploy normal turrets inside of it as well, it can force even the tankiest of champions away. Now that we've covered Barik's skills, let's move into the loadout section. Here we are at the loadouts. This week, I'm going to recommend a loadout I've found extremely effective for Barik from one of the master Barik players himself, Crier. This loadout allows Barik's turrets to be extremely difficult to take down, as well as turning them into strong healing stations that allow Barik to sustain in a fight better than most tanks, as long as your turrets stay up, that is. The basic loadout for Barik isn't bad either, and sets you up to have a much stronger shield than normal. Though this isn't my preferred playstyle, I definitely think this can work for some of you, so give it a try. As always, the best way to find out what cards work best for your style of Barik play is to test them out. Now that we've covered the loadouts, it's time to get into the final section, the tips and tricks. Alright, so my first tip for Barik is to be wise with your turret placement. The key to Barik winning a lot of fights and engagements is usually because his turret does more damage than an enemy player suspects. Having a turret on a high ledge, around a corner, or in a concealed area helps Barik to split an enemy's attention. Time wasted killing a turret gives Barik's team more room to fight distracted opponents, whereas if they ignore the turret, there's a lot of constant DPS they have to deal with on top of everything else. Making them choose between you and your turrets allows you to much more easily secure the objective or the kill. Secondly, Barik is best when he can get to a point first. Barik's entire kit is based off of his turrets being effective. If they get destroyed immediately or he can't deploy them, Barik has officially become the worst champion in the game. Because of this, he needs to be able to set up his turrets in a fight before the majority of the fight begins. This doesn't mean getting master riding every time, but it does mean don't dilly-dally on your way to the point. A Barik that gets to the point second is probably 25% as effective as a Barik that gets to the point first. My last tip is to know when to retreat and when to re-engage. When you have no turrets and your shield is down, don't try to take on a 1v1. Sure, Makoa can do well in that scenario because he has a hook which can change the tide of a fight, and Fernando can do a large amount of DPS with his fireball combo. But Barik, without his turrets, it's just not the same. It's peanut butter without the jelly. It's the Spider-Man series without Spider-Man 3. Just kidding, that one was horrible. But you get the idea. Sometimes playing the patient game, setting up your turrets and waiting for your shield to be up can help you to remain a constant threat to the enemy team. And as we've all heard before, it's the last man standing that wins. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our favorite Dwarven engineer. If you want to see more Rain Day and check out some more Paladins gameplay, you can check the link to my channel in the description below. Also, if you missed last week's episode, you can click the annotation at the end of the screen, and if you want to stay tuned to all of the How to Play episodes I'll be releasing on a weekly basis here, make sure to subscribe to Paladins Game. As always, remember to never give up, never stop gaming, and we'll see you all in the realm.